How do I attract true love? Friends or a partner who will support me in the challenges of life? And how do I attract and maintain honest, joyful friendships? Is it my own fault an attraction error? When I end up in unhealthy relationships, romantic or not, it seems I don't have the ability to make flourish. Then there's rejection. What about when my wild emotions were just so sure it was meant to be and I end up with inner struggles about what went wrong? There's lots to talk about with Diego Cassina listening as he shares his insights. You are listening to the Yoga Podcast, eller Yogapodcasten. I'm your host, Maria Gulea, and this is the first special edition where the whole thing is in English. The reason for that is I am on a Skype line all the way to New York City. The topic of this episode is how to attract the right people into your life. And the only right person to talk to that about is Diego Cassina. Welcome to Yogapodcasten.
Oh, thank you so much, Marianne. Hello, everybody. I'm grateful.
I'm so happy you had the time to speak with me. You are the founder of Bumping Into Love. That's the way you introduce yourself, as well as that you are this insane internet phenomenon. Last time I checked, you have like 26,000 followers. So today we are talking about attraction. I have to ask you, how did you start attracting all these followers into your life? And this is just now. I know in a few months there's going to be a lot more followers, but still it's quite a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I guess as far as following, I really think strategically when it comes to internet marketing, but it's, I think at the very core of it is you attract what you are, and I spent a lot of my personal life trying to find out what was going on in my relationships because I couldn't understand them. And much less, I didn't really have my own love, really. And so I went out and just met people and studied self-development and kept doing all these things to improve the quality of my life. And it got to a point that I learned quite a few things. And eventually I told myself, well, what's the area that you work on the most in your life? Maybe that's where you should teach because you know it and you can understand somebody that's been in pain and gets frustrated from time to time. And so I thought, where is the one place in my life that if I weren't being paid, if I didn't make a single dime, I would still do it because I love it. And it was self-development and relationships. And so I started off by, I did some of the work to go learn a little bit more about public speaking and how to connect with people in a large audience. But at the core of it, I really just used my iPhone and I thought, how can I get a message out there that is true? And I do tend to speak from my heart, and that's, I think, how to connect deeply with somebody so they know that it's not something fake. It's completely genuine. And it's something that I'm passionate about and something that's real as opposed to like some other approach to speaking publicly. And for me also, I don't use words to speak about emotions. I've tried that often. And I find that I almost always fail when it comes to that form of speaking. What I do is I allow my emotions to speak the words. So what I do is I get into an emotion. I feel love. I feel connection. I feel like I'm helping somebody. And then I allow the words to just speak through me. That's not to say I don't go through several takes and all. When the final take is funny enough is it's when I'm just myself. And that's when it's best.
And that's a message in itself.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that is, and they are really truly amazing. All these little messages on YouTube. If you haven't clicked on it, you should definitely go watch Diego Cassina on YouTube. So you're also called a thought leader on finding love, as well as communicating and connecting with the ones that you're already in a love relationship with. I find your messages to be truly vulnerable and real. And you're all about truth and getting to a place of awareness. And that's why, even though this is not actually, because this is a yoga podcast, I need to talk to you about this, because this is where we want to go when we do yoga and we try to integrate more wholly to ourselves. And as far as I hear, as you can say something against this, but as far as I can hear you, you're talking about working with the right energies, with awareness, truth, forgiveness, self-love, and living your full potential. And so to me, this is really relevant when we're into yoga and we are ready to live in harmony with ourselves and others.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that can be drawn between the two topics. And it is, so much of it is, becoming the best self that you are, and then using that to go communicate with somebody. Exactly. And yoga certainly does that for many, many people. In fact, I typically work with women.
Yeah.
That's not to say that I can't help men. I love, talking to men about women, but when it comes to helping women, I've noticed that very often you'll have a woman that has either entered a relationship or maybe just a relationship with the world itself. And sometimes a woman doesn't feel like she can express herself fully. And so she enters the world from a place of repression. And she doesn't totally communicate who she is, what her thoughts, desires are, whatever that is. She tends to become programmed, whether it be through relationships or through society itself. Things that tell a woman how they have to be in public, who they have to be at the workplace, who they have to be in relationships. And honestly, I think all of that is BS. It's completely not true. And oftentimes what that does is that women will actually, there's a little quote that I have: repression leads to depression. And the only solution is expression. What happens is when, especially women, but overall any human being, when they feel repressed, like they can't be that part of themselves and just express and flow and be free, that tends to be more of a characteristics that are associated with women.
I definitely see yoga as a physical expression of something deeper.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because I've taken women, and through conversation, I've gotten them to a point where they can all of a sudden feel like they can express themselves once again. And they always could. It was just unlocking some of those barriers. And what's funny is, I ask them, what are the things that you've repressed? Or maybe how is it you can express your divine femininity or your radiance? And oftentimes it goes into that creative aspect, that the arts, the painting, and for many of them, it is that place of yoga. And yoga is an incredibly, just a beautiful tool to reconnect with yourself and with your emotions and, unlocking emotions that might be locked in different parts of your physiology. And I think that's incredibly important.
So I want to talk to you about how do we attract the right people into our lives. And I think a lot of people want to know that, even though we live good lives and we are happy about the people that we are in this life with, then still, that could be nice. A lot of things would go smoother if, we were not stuck in different relationships that are not good for us. So one of your points, indirectly, you are saying that we consciously can decide who we attract.
Yes.
So you need to spell that out to me, because you've been talking in one of your videos, you talk about smiling, and that's good, but you can, as a woman, you might smile to the wrong person, and you have to be careful to just walk around and smile all the time. Can we be selective about who we attract?
Yes, I believe so. I think first off, smiling in itself is something that is a gift that you give yourself. They've done studies where you can take a person, you put a pencil, you have them bite a pencil for about 2 minutes, and at the end of it, it actually releases all these endorphins through the body and actually heals a lot of wounds that a person may have. Yeah, so smiling, what it does is it also puts you in a position, an emotion, where you start to remember all those beautiful moments that you've had previously. Yesterday I was at a park nearby here, and I was just seeing the way the fountain, there were several water fountains, and I saw how the water just danced in the air before it made its final transgress to the floor. And in that moment, I just was appreciative of that moment. And what I did was enter a place in my mind where I was happy. I was smiling. And it's funny that the human mind does amazing things, because as soon as you do that, you can remember all those other moments that you were happy, but in relationships, this from the opposite perspective. You get in a fight and you remember all the other times that you've been angry.
Yeah.
So smiling is something that you do for yourself as well. So when you mentioned, well, you have to be careful who you smile of. Yes, this is absolutely important for women, right? Because, you could be you could smile at the wrong person, and then you attract this energy that may not even be you, right? So I think there's a limit to you attract what you are. And so I think the phrase needs to change a little bit. And what I always say is you attract and you maintain what you are, right? So let's say you smile to somebody and then they come over and you realize this is not for me. You know, you find yourself to be in a position where, for instance, let's say his energy is sexual in nature and your energy is much more, let's say, I want to meet you energy. You know, you attract and you maintain the same energy, right? So you attracted this person, right? It was just from the point of a smile. But then at that point, you had to maintain them. And you realize, you know what, this person's energy at this point isn't necessarily one that's conducive to a relationship the way I want to start a relationship. Now, sexuality is incredibly important. It is a great biological imperative. It is the reason we are here on Earth is to produce offspring that will go off into future generations. Yeah. You know, so there's an importance to that, but there's a time and place. So
you're saying we should still smile and then afterwards set our limits and boundaries.
I think that's a part of it. I think one way that we can approach it is realize that even that sexuality that person exhibits at that point in time, if you want to think about this from a different perspective, that sexuality is incredibly important. And, you know, I think especially, you know, if we look at that man and we say, well, you know what, that's wrong. He shouldn't do that. He shouldn't be sexual. You know, I think what that does is it creates a lot of bottlenecks in our emotional bodies, you know, things that afterward you have to cure with yoga. And so what I think might be an easier or maybe a more holistic approach would be to appreciate that part of him, you know, still have your standards and your rules for how you want your interactions to have, how to be, how to become. But appreciate that you even have that part of you. And to repress that or reject that is also repression on yourself, on those elements that you have that are incredibly sexual. It's a biological imperative. So one way that I think that women can do, and this is something that I find absolutely phenomenal, is, you know, we walk through nature. And when I say walk through nature, that could be your parks, it could be your sidewalks, it could be your subways, it could be your bus stations. But to walk through nature and realize that a lot of time what we do is we project all these images onto other people. You know, that person, I wouldn't want to talk to that person, or look at that person. They're annoying, or whatever. You know, we have all these things. You know, you can overhear people that somebody walks by somebody that's overweight, and all of a sudden they say, "Oh, look at that fat person," which to me is just, I find it fascinating from a perspective of human behavior, but I don't necessarily think that it's conducive to our greatest emotional growth. And so one exercise that I found has been incredibly useful to me and other people is to realize that we're always projecting. And what we're actually finding from other people is parts of ourselves. And so we can go out into nature, onto those sidewalks, into those buses, those subway systems, whatever that is, stores. And you can literally look at anybody and think, that is the part of me that. And if you use that, you'll find a lot of amazing things happen for you. So you can walk through a sidewalk and you could see a person that rushes next to you and you say, that's the part of me that is always in a rush. And you can appreciate that. And then you can see somebody that is maybe lost, and you can say, you know what, that's the part of me that gets confused from time to time. Yeah. I appreciate that part of me. And then you walk through.
Because we are all of it.
We are all of it. And, you know, if you keep doing this and you say, you might eventually come across someone and you say, you know what, that's the part of, or you keep doing this. You say, that's the part of me that gets lost. That's the part of me that's frightened. That's the part of me that's happy. That's the part of me that laughs. And then you might come across someone and you say, that is every single part of me. And there you want
I love this. I love this. Oh, this is what happens when I see your messages. It's just, okay. This is really great. But I'm thinking about then women who get attracted to, you know, bad boys and like truly these guys are not good for any woman because of their mental state, and these girls will end up on drugs or just stressed out mentally, because of, well, some sort of violence. What's that about? Why do some women get attracted to that?
Well, this goes back to, you know, I used to be a very nice guy. You know, I would do everything to please. I was a people pleaser. You know, I wanted to do everything to make sure that she would love me. And I didn't have my own backbone, you know, and I think love is, as a man or a woman, you need a backbone. And, you know, so I needed to incorporate elements of the quote unquote bad boy right? And that's not to say that now I'm an asshole, right? Because I think an asshole is taking it way too far, and you don't have the other person's emotions in play. You know, for me, the baseline is love. The baseline is caring for this other human being. I literally care about every single person that I've ever dated, you know, even if it was, or like maybe even met on the subway for 1 minute, you know, but to have a baseline of caring. But when it comes to why is it that women sometimes find themselves allured or attracted to, or maybe even in relationships with people that are, you know, it could get to reaches of violence, but maybe the bad boy, the person that doesn't necessarily have their highest emotions at play, you know, they don't care at that level. And it comes back to our evolutionary bio to a certain extent. You know, we are all wired neurochemically, neurobiologically for the tribal society. For 2 million years, we lived in sub-Saharan African deserts trying as a tribe to survive. It was both the hunter and the gatherer. You know, the woman would need to, she would be the forager. She would go out and collect berries and bring them back to the family and nurture the young. This is, while we've done immense things in society nowadays that I think have improved our model of the universe, women can now go to the workplace and do amazing things, and men can now go and care for the young that they have at home. We still are wired a certain way when it comes to relationship. And when men go out, and when you look at men in these tribal societies, they would go out into the bush with their spear in hand, and they need to go and kill that saber-toothed tiger and bring it back home. And that needed a certain level of aggression. And within a tribe, a woman needed to make sure that she was safe. When you talk to women, the most important thing for them is safety, you know, to make sure that she's safe. And this is why one of my videos went viral, was also because I talked about the safety of her expression, for her to allow herself to, for her to experience that full depth and breadth of her emotion, to express freely. And so when it comes to safety in that tribal society, what we would look at is for the alpha male. Because if this person was the bad boy, if he could get away with that kind of behavior, well, then he must be, by definition, somebody that's either linked to the alpha male of that tribe, or he may be the alpha male. And so that signifies security, even though in our way of mind, it could essentially become something that aggression is pulled over into the woman. And so what I think is that aggression is incredibly important. You know, it's what we have as men from time to time, but it's to channel it effectively, you know, when you see men that speak about their goals, that's when you find out what he really is about, because he'll talk about those goals the same way we used to talk about the saber-toothed tiger: crush it, kill it, destroy it. It's that channeled aggression, right? And so I think that a man necessarily, like for a man to feel that flow of energy, it comes from a different perspective. It's the strength and the warmth. And all too often what men do is they overexert the strength, that direction that we had, because a woman is freedom, but a man is necessarily needs to have a little element of direction to be able to go out into the bush. And yeah, right. And women.
But this is a really, really interesting explanation, actually, for why women should be drawn to that, even. So because you can also take it from an approach of, okay, the woman is suffering from something and she's addicted to, I don't know, recognition or something, and she wants to save this guy. But what you're saying is, it's really interesting that we are drawn to that alpha male symptom. Even though he's not in a right and healthy state of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we need to do is realize that for a man, I think it's important to have both two elements: strength and warmth. The warmth allows a woman to know, it gives a woman the place for her to know that she can come in, she can get into his heart, and the strength lets her know that she's protected. And so there's an animal that I think captures this really great. I forget what the animal is called. I think it's a coelopod. It's a type of fish. And so when you see this fish, the male fish swimming with the female fish, it shows her side. It shows the side to her is that warm side. It's kind of like a cool white hue. But the side that it shows the rest of the world is a darker hue. So that way it knows, do not mess with me and my female. Is this idea that, you know, I protect the family unit. I have a direction for the family unit. I think, you know, for instance, if you see the way I interact with people, I care very immensely. I care immensely about the person that walks next to me. And sometimes I'll stop next to somebody and yesterday I stopped next to somebody. I just want to know, the way she was just looking at a particular piece of scenery, so it doesn't mean that I have to go aggression. So I channel that aggression into my goals, to say, you know what, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to destroy it. What a woman could do is recognize that this is aggression, but it hasn't been channeled. And when somebody doesn't channel that aggression can be flip-flopped. And if you bring it into a relationship, I think a woman absolutely needs to draw a line and say, no, this is not what I stand for. This is not what I'm about. What happens also is, these men and women I say men and women because it's human nature. Sometimes what a woman and man can do is they go flip-flop between the hot and the cold, the dark and the light. And we each have that element. But to showcase the relationship, both of those elements, to show like, well, hey, I'm like that aggression, or that element of emotional detachment, I think is a lower evolved love. We have an incredible draw to that because it creates a level of variety from us, perhaps from those evolutionary societies. What we need to realize there is that's an addiction that we could have. It's the hot and the cold. It's the same as a casino. You walk into a casino and you go into a slot machine and you have these people that play their entire lives because sometimes they'll win and sometimes they'll lose. And they hope that in the future they'll hit a jackpot, when in the reality there's no true guarantee of that. So I think what women can see is, if they see that element, to channel it. And one way to channel it is to draw a line and say, this is what I will stand for. This is what I will not stand for. And make your self-love and your relationship most important, because that's the most important relationship you can ever have in your life. Everything else is secondary to that.
That's how you can protect yourself. And this topic relates to another message you have about chivalry, about men who wants to protect and serve, about masculinity and femininity. I am really just in heaven when you talk like this, because even though I can't really defend the argument for it in this equal society of ours, because when I say something like this, like if I say I prefer that the man will pay on a date, people will say, all right, but then you need to stay at home and wash all the dishes or something on your own. Right. And I'm like, yeah, okay, it's irrational, so I can't really have this opinion. But there is something about it that he still needs to have this masculine role, and I need to feel that in order to be truly drawn, so that I don't end up with this masculine role, because that's not me. I've been on several dates where I end up paying the whole thing, and to me that's just an indicator that I'm just gonna wear the pants in this relationship, and I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of avenues that we can take this conversation from here. One is when it comes to, I believe that every behavior has a positive intent. Every emotion that you feel is absolutely right. I mean, I've said this in relationships where I'm the lady that I was dating and I were quote unquote fighting, and I told her every emotion that you feel is absolutely right. And so for you to say, well, you know what, the act that this person is having at this moment, which is he doesn't pay for the date, that has a certain meaning to it within your emotional body, and it means that, well, you know what, he isn't being masculine if I have to pay for the date. These are meanings that people associate with certain behaviors, certain ways that people engage with the world. And so we can quickly change that behavior, because really that is a rule that you've established that says if a person doesn't pay on the date, then he isn't masculine. And then that means that I have to enter masculinity, and that's not who I am. So there's a neurochemical cascade that happens at the end. You think, you know what, with this person, I'm not going to be able to be me. We have to realize that every single human being has both the masculine and the feminine characteristic. I realize that can be a triggering statement for many people. It certainly was for me when I started realizing, well, you know what, I have feminine characteristics. And I was like, oh God, like, it feels like, I just hearing that feels wrong in my body to a certain extent, right? And so what I realized is that at a very core, masculinity is about direction. It's about direction, and the ability to direct the tribe, the ability to direct ourselves into the bush, the ability to direct that spear into the saber-toothed tiger, so that way it doesn't kill our family. And if not, so instead we have meat for the tribe, for the village.
But then what about what they want to decide everything? What is that? Is that masculine as well?
Yes.
Because I think a lot of women have that.
Yeah, I think decisiveness is something that we can all experience, right? So that's direction, right? Direction is what the man is, what masculinity tends to be. For women, it's femininity. It's free, and that femininity tends to be more freedom. So every human being has both direction and freedom. I mean, direction is going out and making a productive day, and then freedom is going to sleep at night, right? So we all have direction and freedom. And so when it comes to decisiveness, right, or the decision, or the perhaps even to a larger extent control, I think it's direction without borders, without restraint. It's direction at the furthest extreme, you know. And so decisiveness is absolutely important, and this is something that men can definitely learn. And I think it's important for all of us to be able to decide, you know, to decide where we want to chart the course of our life, you know, to say, you know, in 10 years' time, I will surely arrive. Where do I want to be? But,
so there's nothing wrong with that when you're a woman. There's nothing wrong with having like that male energy of wanting to be in control and having the overview of things. But then you just need the man to be somewhat still strong, you know, stronger than that.
Yeah, the way I phrase it is, you know, that it's absolutely important for women to be able to access that emotion, as it is for a man to be able to access his freedom. But there's a difference between accessing and living. You know, and if you live constantly in a controlling, deciding, directive environment, if you're a woman. Now, granted, a woman might be that energy, and by all means, I suggest every person be who they are. And so, if a woman finds herself in that energy, she's going to tend to attract freedom, the opposite polarity. And that might be a man that doesn't necessarily decide, isn't necessarily the type of person that will direct or control, and control is to a certain extent, I think. I see that as more of an extreme, right? It's direction a little bit too extreme. For me, it's a man that tends to be more in a freedom flow may not be able to, you know, decide where to take you on a date, you know. But when a woman is in her freedom, in her flow, if this is where not only where she accesses but where she lives, she will find that she's attracting the opposite polarity, a man that tends to be more on the direction side, that will be able to be decisive on a date. I remember being with a woman on a date once, and I cared immensely for her. And sometimes what we do when we care immensely is we want to make sure that you're just happy. And what we do sometimes as men is we tend to fall into freedom a little bit more. So I remember.
Yes, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And so what I told her on that date, as I said, you know, where do you want to go? Like, what do you want to do? And it was I wanted her to be like happy, you know. And I remember her words distinctly. She said to me, she said, I want you to decide. I remember holding off for a minute and thinking like, okay, well, yeah, but I want you to like be a part of the decision, right? Because that's important for a man to take a woman's concerns and emotions, to feel her, so that way her emotions and her being and her essence is part of the plan. She goes, you pick a spot. If I don't like it, I will speak up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's it. So that we really have that need for someone else to say, this is where we're going to go. And then we can say, no, let's go another way.
Yes, to give her an opportunity to say no. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, so we're talking mostly about relationships here. And maybe we can talk later about, in general, how to attract the right people into your life. But let's just continue down this path. I want to share, like, my example where I am in my love life, okay?
Okay.
And even though you're listening and thinking, whoa, she has this messed up love life, at least then I hope you feel that you are in a better place. And that's what this podcast is about anyway. I just want people to live a little better and feel better. So, okay, my challenge is I fall in love way too fast. I know a lot of women who do that a lot slower than I, so I know that I'm exceptional. I believe, though, that through the years, I've developed my ability to select the guys that I shed all this love on. But still, it still comes back to me. And I just thought not so long ago, now this is the one. And of course, right away, I fall in love and we end up kissing, actually. So, you know, there's something mutual about this. And I feel better than ever. And he is perfect in my eyes, because this is what happens when I fall in love. And of course, it's a very superficial kind of love, but I just still call it that because I feel absolutely insane when I'm in that state. And then what happens is it goes on only for a few days. This is a very short relationship.
Yeah.
And then the next time I see him, he says he has a wrong feeling about it. A wrong feeling about him and I. And then that was the end of it. And I can't help to think, okay, I attracted this amazing guy into my life. But something went wrong in the universe, and the universe forgot to make him like me back. What's up with that for attraction?
I think it comes down to that last statement that you said. Maybe the universe did the right thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because what happens very often is people will reject one another. You know, it's just human nature that we're not all going to like one another when it comes to relationship and wanting to be with one person specifically. What happens after rejection is sometimes people turn that energy inward and think, well, you know what? I'm not enough. And I attracted the wrong energy. And I. And, you know, I think it's much more beautiful and much more real to realize that every rejection is actually a redirection. And to take that energy and who you are as a human being and realize that no matter who it is that you meet at any point in time, you know, and this is both like a beautiful and a sad point here, but I remember I was asking my dad at one point, I said, you know, I was talking to him about something, like some piece, something that I had, like an object, you know, like a car, I think it was, that we eventually sold. And he said, everything that we've come into this world with is everything that we leave the world with. And so anything that comes into our possession is only in our possession for a short period of time. And all I can do is care for it and love it, knowing that eventually it will go away.
But you talk about this also with relationships and people in your life, because that is just so sad to think about we're going to lose them.
I don't think it's a loss. I think every person enters our life to give us a certain lesson, you know, and I think that, you know, if you look at it from the perspective of mathematics, right, like you have two planes, right? And so their planes are like almost like two sheets of paper. And sometimes like those two sheets will intersect at one particular point. And so it'll just create a line, right? And so these two sheets of paper are intersected at one moment. And so that particular person, you know, they were there for you for maybe it was an hour, maybe it was a day, maybe it was 6 years, you know? But I think what happens is what we realize is sometimes we project all this stuff onto another human being when in reality they may not necessarily be that person. I think that we're constantly being redirected to the most beautiful love of our lives. And that's where those two sheets of paper are basically one on top of each other. They're one and the same. We enter relationships that might be a short period of time, and then we think, you know, well, I was rejected and there's something wrong with me, when I truly believe that we're being redirected to the greatest love of our lives. You know, because we learn, we were redirected to one of two things: a greater self, meaning we learn a lot more about ourselves, and a greater half, meaning sometimes this person that we were with just wasn't the one, you know, and you feel that in different energies and forms in your body. You know, eventually you meet it with somebody that is the one. And when it comes to maybe loving a person too quickly, right?
Yeah.
I think that ability to fire off that mechanism of love is incredibly important, right? But I think it's amazing if you can redirect that energy into yourself first, so that you fire off love quickly for yourself. You know, and so when somebody isn't necessarily the person that's right for you, you think, oh, you know what? Like, I still love myself even through this, and I'm not going to change who I am to fit another person's model of the world.
So he tells me about this wrong feeling inside of him just after having seen me in this really awkward bathing suit. Okay. And it's purple and black dotted, and it's maybe cut pretty high in the bottom, and I feel uncomfortable in it. And of course, afterwards, I connect that to, well, my body, you know, I get insecure because I think, what made him feel I wasn't right? And then it goes into me, like it's something just behind my skin that is not right. Do you know what I mean? So it's a very dangerous trap to fall into, just to blame yourself and make it into you not being right.
Yeah, you know, I think what happens is it's the neurochemical cascade, right? So the first thing is, you know, we're always associating, and we're always trying to find out and solve what's going on in our environment to make sure we're okay. You know, and so you put on this bathing suit, and then for whatever reason, this man didn't like it, you know, and or he just expressed an emotion, right? It may not even been associated to it, But because it was in that moment, you associate it to the bathing suit. And then you associate it, or like, maybe it's not the bathing suit, maybe it's me.
Yeah.
And then you think, okay, well, what part of me? Okay, is it my weight? What is that? And then all of a sudden you start thinking, well, am I not enough for him? And then if I'm not enough for him, then I won't be loved. And if I'm not loved, and this person is somehow linked in this group of people, that he's important to me, obviously. And so we're in this tribal society together, and then I'm going to be rejected. And to be rejected from the group, from society, means that it's death. Because you could be outcast from the society, and then that saber-toothed tiger that's looming around in the vicinity is going to come and get you, or another tribe that doesn't have your best intentions in mind. So this is, the first step is to appreciate even this behavior that shows up for you, and realize, like, sometimes we just associate incorrectly, right? Because in all honesty, what's going on there is people seldom reject one another. What they reject oftentimes is the emotion that another person is experiencing in that moment, and what they're rejecting is that which they repress in themselves. So you go off and you express love or caring or happiness or whatever that emotion was that you expressed in that moment. And he wasn't rejecting you. He was rejecting that emotion. Do you really want to be with a person that's rejecting love?
No, that's true. But a lot of guys, you must have a comment on this as well, about falling in love so quickly that the guy gets, I don't know, intimidated somehow. Because a lot of guys will, and we as women, my girlfriends, we say to each other, you shouldn't text him too soon, and all of that game dating thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I don't want to come on too quickly. And I find that really hard, because I'm trying to be truly authentic and live as I am. And then I have feelings quickly. And so I express them. And then that becomes maybe not to my advantage.
Yeah, no, I think when it comes is, and it's, when it comes to relationships are built on scarcity. It isn't abundance. It's scarcity. It's, I've studied several relationships. It's scarcity. When we feel like we don't have that one person, all of a sudden they become much more valuable to us. And so this is what women say when, don't text him too soon. And this is psychologically proven. They've taken, I remember being, I just in my experience, I remember being in Florida for, I don't know, like the better half of the summer, and I never went to the beach. And all of a sudden when I had to leave the very next week, all of a sudden I really wanted to go to the beach because I hadn't gone there, and it became a scarce resource. People often do, men and women, in order to create that scarcity for another human being, so that way they enter relationships, is they play hard to get. I think what's better than playing hard to get is actually being hard to get. And right. And so what I think is, some of that expression that you have, that you channel into this other person, is something that you can also channel into yourself, whether it be, for today, I'm going to turn off my phone and I'm just going to go and paint, or I'm just going to go and do yoga, or I'm not going to check my phone. I'm just going to be with my friends, or even check your phone and realize, I prefer to be like one and connected with the people that I'm surrounded with in this moment, whether that be in conversation or maybe even just connected with nature. And you don't have to check your phone. You don't have to respond immediately, but it's not from a place of trying to play a game. It's trying to just be connected to where you are presently.
But Diego, have you ever tried to be so much in love that you can't really get that person out of your head?
Yeah.
So no matter what you do, it's still in there somehow.
Yeah, and I think it's even more than that. Sometimes we project that love onto other people. How many times have you walked through a sidewalk and you thought you saw that person, and it wasn't them, right?
Yeah. He's everywhere.
Yeah. And so I think, because that's a behavior that you have, right? And I think that's a behavior that everybody has. They just access it, or either quickly or slowly, but they eventually get to that place when they're in a relationship with somebody. I think that's incredibly important to have, and to appreciate that, because that's something that can serve you in relationships, right? It's just, when it comes to meeting somebody up front, I think it's incredibly important for us as human beings to realize that, to respect the other person where they are, right? So for instance, if a man comes up to you and says, "Oh, I want to have sex with you," if that's the first thing out of his mouth, you're going to think, well,
too soon.
Get away, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Too soon. And so if somebody comes up to you and they express love immediately, I haven't even been able to go through all the different elements of love, because love to me is a neurochemical cascade. There's all these different emotions that are at play. And so one of them is just appreciating the other human being, however they show up for me, and appreciating their essence, whether that be masculine or feminine, whatever that is. I tend to be drawn to the feminine essence in a female. And so appreciating that and allowing that to take form and take place, and then the next step would be, to have a level of intrigue, because so many times people build entire relationships on attention. I just want to have the attention of men around me to see the woman that I'm with. Attention, as opposed to intrigue, curiosity, fascination, allure. These are the emotions that you want another person to develop over time.
And I guess what you call true connection as well, right? Because you have a place where you say to be lonely or loneliness is the absence of connection.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that.
And to allow someone to connect with you, what I believe absolutely is of absolute importance is emotional investment. And what we do too often sometimes is we try to get something in relationship, whether that be love or sex. Love tends to be something that women tend to want to get in a relationship almost too soon, and what men want to get in a relationship almost too soon is sex. But realize that both those things are incredibly important for a relationship, to have a passionate sexual relationship and also a beautiful, loving relationship. And when it comes to connection with another human being, I think that's absolutely the most important goal in any connection that we have, any interaction that we have. Instead of going up to somebody and saying, well, I want to have sex, or I want to get her number, or I want to go on a date, or I want to have a relationship, I want to have love with this person, I want to have a husband and wife, and I want to have 3 children, and instead of having all these things,
the plans.
All these plans that we have in place, instead, let's just focus on the connection. Because I'll tell you what happens when you start focusing on all that other stuff. When you say sex is the ultimate goal, or marriage is the ultimate goal with this person, well, potentially that will arrive. Maybe you do end up getting to that place with this person. But if you've studied anybody that has ever achieved something, when they achieve that huge goal, immediately after is this feeling of emptiness. They feel, well, what else is there? What's next? And the same thing happens in relationships way too often. It's the same thing that happened to, if you familiarize yourself with the people that went to the moon. They went to the moon, and when they came back, well, they went to the moon. After that, what else could ever be similar to that? They forgot to find the beauty in a person's smile or the laugh of a child. And so I think what we have to do is we realize that connection is the most important thing, to have connection with another human being, because you wake up today and you can be incredibly connected to that person that you call your husband or your wife. And then the next morning, that connection is always moving. It's always evolving. And to want to connect with that person that day, and to see how it is that person evolved over time, over the night, and who they are as a human being today. And all that other stuff are detours on the path, Yeah.
So that should be our true objective, to connect. And I think you're right. Actually, in my case, I have 2 children. I was a young mother and got divorced early on. And I think for a lot of guys, that is like a showstopper, because, okay, there's kids already, and then you have all these rational arguments that may not allow for there to be a true connection.
I think that there are people of all sorts and types, people of all forms and categories. So yes, absolutely. There will be men that will immediately say no. Just the same way you say no to every man that you walk past in the street, right?
Yeah.
But there will be men that say yes, this is something that is incredibly important, to go out there and believe that there are people this way. Because when we believe the opposite, we tend to find it, don't we? And so if we go out into the world and we believe that there are people that are caring, that are loving, that care for our well-being, that when we come up and we show up with love, even quickly, even passionately, there's going to be somebody that says, you know what, I love that about her.
Yeah, that's what I want. Exactly, that's what I want. And I think for me, it's also, okay, if someone reacts to me like that, then that just means there must be someone better, I should say. Because what a woman wants is really to be appreciated for what she is.
Yes, the same thing that a man wants.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to ask you about this way we meet each other, because you spoke a little bit about it in your video about chivalry. So a lot of people meet through Tinder.
Yes.
And it's a great place when, for example, you have kids or other stuff in your baggage, and you can just show another photo of yourself, and you can decide this is what I want to give out to the world, and then you may or may not find a man that you like. What do you think about a way of meeting like Tinder?
Well, this is a place where I get a little heated. So, I personally think it's access, don't live. You can access Tinder or any other dating app that you'd like, but don't live there. Don't use this as a substitute for going out into the real world and having interactions with people. Because I'll tell you, a lot of times people will go to self-help and self-development seminars and they'll do the work and they actually become great, amazing, beautiful human beings. And then their model of communication with another person is Tinder or a dating app or online dating, right?
But this is what we do now. I mean, how do we meet each other apart from that? Isn't it the most common way to meet each other, man and woman?
I think it's common, but I don't necessarily believe it's how we were designed. So we look at each other and we think, so Tinder, right? Or dating apps in general, right? We take a person's three-dimensional and four-dimensional and multi-dimensional worth and we project them onto a two-dimensional plane. They just become a picture. And based on that picture, we create all these different things for this person, right? And if we may even start communicating with this person, but every psychological book will tell you words are 7% of interaction. Everything else is vocal tonality and the way we show up and the expressions that we have. And, and so what we do often when we're talking to somebody online, even through text, is we project our own emotions in that moment onto the other human being, which is a disservice to them, is a disservice to us, is a disservice to the relationship. And, I think especially, if we want to think about this also, women have intuition. They have an ability to know immediately whether even an environment, I've been on dates where I walk into a room with a woman and she thinks the energy in this room isn't right. And I listen to that, because some part of her doesn't feel safe. And the same thing happens with a woman, like how we talked about previously, where, some guy might walk up to you and you feel, I don't like this. Yeah. That's your intuition speaking to you. That's something that has been evolved over millions of years. I think that that's incredibly important and a useful tool for you when it comes to relationships, to go out into the world and connect with people anywhere, at your cafe, at the bookstore, wherever that is, to have those elements as well. You say, well, you know what? Everybody's online. Yeah, but everybody's also walking around. Everybody's also...
That's so true. Yeah. And but is that what you mean when you say in one of your videos that you want people to meet like in the old days?
Yes.
Is that just walking up randomly on the street? So how do we do that?
Well, that's a great question, right? Because that's a great quality question. That's a question that I searched and thought for many years. And, I went and studied people that did that kind of stuff, quote unquote pickup artists. But then I felt at the end it was like this like emptiness where it was about sex, and as opposed to the connection. I think what it comes to is, I just kind of went back to square one. I said, okay, if I want to meet people, I'm in New York, there's a subway, I have about 2 minutes. How can I connect with this person? And I started asking myself those questions and the answers came to me. Because I went out and I met a different person every single day. And it wasn't necessarily, it could have been a person, it could have been an elderly lady, not somebody that wanted relationship wise, but it was trying to find out what creates connection in that moment. And, I think that there are opportunities for everybody, So let's say, for instance, you walk into a cafe and you see somebody that you are intrigued by. It's, perhaps they have something that intrigues you. I remember there was a lady that had an umbrella with kind of like a duck. The handle was shaped like a duck's face or whatever. And so I remember I saw that, and for whatever reason, I was intrigued by that object that she had. Mm-hmm. Intrigued on the object will eventually become intrigue on the subject, meaning the person. Mm-hmm. And so I looked at that and I just started a conversation from there. I was like, I absolutely love your umbrella. And we started a conversation, and then afterward we started finding out more about each other, where we're from, and all these different avenues of conversation. And the thing is, we need to remove the idea of getting, right? Because there's stuff out there that says, get the guy, get the girl, all this other stuff, but ultimately you've already lost, because you're trying to get another human being, as opposed to giving them a moment of interaction, a moment of connection, a moment of conversation. And
Right. So, so when you talk about getting attracted to an object, actually another question I want to ask you about is it more right to be spiritual attracted to someone than physical attracted to someone? Does it matter which part of the person we are attracted to?
I think it's both. I think if you purely I think the top level is both, where we're both physically and spiritually attracted to another human being. And then I think the level below that is spiritual attraction. And I think those are kind of like two things that merge, and form, because I can tell you that if you're in a relationship with somebody and God forbid, and you love each other immensely and you're physically attracted, and God forbid something happens to the other human being. Let's say it's just they become overweight, but God forbid they get into an accident, right? You're at a spiritual level of attraction. All of a sudden you have so much emotional investment. If this is the right person, that physical attraction, even if it's not that physical element, we are so much more than our bodies, and when we fuse our energies at that spiritual level, the physicality of it doesn't matter at all.
But a lot of women are afraid of that guys only want them for their physical appearance. Is it just because of the way that I look that he likes me?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And what I say that for that is, there's a quote, different strokes for different folks. Like some people will absolutely not like that body type or that, one person will not like the way you look and another person will absolutely love it. For instance, I remember I was walking down the street here with my friend a couple weeks ago. I see a woman that's walking down the street and I think, oh my God, that girl. I need to go talk to her. And he goes, that one there. He's like, no way. He's like, I can't. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Even here.
Yeah, that's how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, even here, I tend to like a woman that I can just feel her, like I can wrap my arms around her. That's just me. Yeah. That's just me. And for the long time, I remember being, and this is a message out to anybody that's listening too. For a while, I thought, well, that's not spiritual to want that, and then I realized, but then when I started to deny myself that, I started feeling bad. I started feeling like, just like getting to areas of depression and realized, no, this is just the way my physical body responds to another human being. And this is exactly what I feel, and so what I say is what we absolutely need is to listen to the visceral reaction in our body. And so what I do when I walk around is, for instance, if I wanted to date a model, right, and I walk around and I'm walking down the sidewalk and I see a model, then I go and I talk to her and let's say I enter a relationship with her, hopefully eventually I get to an emotional attraction, but it was a physical attraction that got me there. But, the chances of that actually happening are pretty slim. If a woman can feel that there's just a physical attraction there. If I walk up to someone and all I see is their physical element, it's logic. It's a relationship that's built on logical transactional. It's a transaction. And what's important is emotional transference. And so what I do when I walk down on the sidewalk is I will walk through the sidewalk, like on the sidewalk or in stores or cafes or whatever the case is, and I just do what I have to do on a normal basis. Like today, I might want to go to the park. I might want to go to the cafe and have a drink or whatever that is, And so I just do me, but I make sure to get out into nature. And
so what you're saying is that if you come from a true place within yourself, then you're also drawn to whole persons.
Well, what I say is eventually you're going to find somebody that elicits those butterflies in your body. Somebody will walk past you and will think, holy shit. And so I look for that holy shit moment. That moment when I say that to myself and I'm like, and I feel that in my body, it's a visceral reaction. It's my body telling me that it's this person. I could walk next to, New York has a lot of beautiful women. I can walk next to a person that's a model, a ballerina, whatever that is, that's the stereotypical version of beauty. And I won't feel those butterflies in my stomach.
Exactly.
But the instant that I feel those butterflies in the stomach, that could be a person that isn't necessarily the quote unquote stereotypical version of beauty. But for whatever reason, my body says this one. Yeah. And I listen to that. I walk up and I say in that moment, I'm like, I don't know why, but I feel like I had to speak to you.
To me, that happens when I know the guy. I have to know him a little bit. He has to win me over somehow with his intellect or something. And then he can be magnificent and I can't see anything else than him.
Yes, absolutely. It's the places where we start to connect and we learn a little bit more than ourselves and or a little bit more about that person.
Yeah.
And we find that emotional attraction, right? And it's not just a physical attraction. And with emotional attraction, you can eventually develop physical attraction. So I think emotional attraction comes before physical attraction. But to have both is absolutely beautiful. And I think when it comes to that visceral reaction that you had elicited all that curiosity. And so I realized that that's the trigger. That's the trigger that every human being has. At some moment, they feel, holy shoot. And so whether that happens because you just go out and you meet people and then eventually you're like, oh my God, this person is like amazing, and to have little interactions with people or to just do your thing. And then eventually you see somebody that creates all those visceral reactions in you, those butterflies or whatever that is for you. Or maybe it was just the fact that they walked past you and you started to wonder. They created a question for you in your mind. This is intrigue, right? This is different from attention. Or interest. It's a moment when you start questioning. When you think, oh, I don't know why that person did this. I don't know why why is it that they're wearing that? And when you start creating that questioning, even if you don't know why, or why it is that you're even asking those questions, realize that you're in a level of intrigue. And to be in that place in your mind, in your body, well, that's something you should probably investigate. To go over and say, well, hey, you know what? I hope you speak English. and that for me is they basically start realizing that they're in a conversation, because all too often people will not be in a conversational mode when they're at the bookstore or at the cafe. So if you walk up, if you walk up and you're like, hey, I hope you speak English, that's it. And they say, oh yeah, or not too much, and you can riff off of that. And have a laugh or whatever the case is.
But that's true, and that's the problem with meeting each other out in the real world, because we're just in our own space. And if someone were to come up and ask me out, I would probably judge him to be something I shouldn't go out with, someone I shouldn't go out with.
Right, because they probably do that to everybody, right? And so, I think what we need to do is be very mindful and caring about where the other human being is, and even in their interaction in that moment. So what I'll do is I'll say, hey, I hope you speak English. And some people will categorize that as a line. To me, it's the intent behind it. For me, I want this person to feel, they feel safe. In a moment they feel safe. They can see my energy. I'm not requesting anything that's difficult, and it's a place where they can say, okay, I choose to enter a conversation with them, or I choose not to. They can easily say no. And then from that point afterward, I say, I just noticed you, and I don't know why, but I just felt so intrigued. Mm-hmm. And then I'll say, hey, I'm Diego. I'm not having them answer a question. They're just like, wow, okay, you're intrigued, but you don't know why. So it's a place where, we use that variety. It's not necessarily putting somebody on the back foot, although that could be what they feel. It's just that place where they think, oh my God, it's more than my looks. It's like this. And for me, it's very real, because I felt that visceral reaction. All of a sudden I started questioning my mind. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know why, but I want to know who this human being is. When I phrase that, when I say that, they, like a woman especially, will make she'll quickly scan every part of my body. She'll know whether I'm telling the truth or not. And when she really feels, oh my God, he's telling the truth. He really does feel this. Then we enter a beautiful conversation. And
that's connection.
It's connection, exactly. It's not me trying to get a number it's just me saying, you know what, I want to experience you. I want to know who you are. And I think women can do this as well, because I promise you, I've been several times when I've wanted to meet somebody, but then I was just too scared, because we men are scared shitless of women.
You should be.
Yeah, right. And it's evolutionary as well. If we walked up to a woman that was aligned with that tribal leader, then that could mean our death. So that's the feeling of a man walking up to a woman is the same as a man trying to jump out of a plane. So one thing that a woman can do is smile or just make a little comment or something, so that way a man feels like, oh my God, she kind of she has an interest. There's a potential here.
Yourself. But then again, you don't want to give too much away, because then the guy is not interested to hunt you down. And
I don't know about that. No? For instance, let's say Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie just broke up, right?
Yeah.
If Brad Pitt showed a level of interest in you, to a certain extent, you'd be okay with it, maybe. If Brad Pitt was emotionally attractive, right? And for men, it's the same thing, if Angelina Jolie, for instance, and we're projecting a lot of emotions on them. Let's say they're emotionally attractive as well as physically attractive, and if that person had an absolute interest in me, well, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, that's true. So a lot of women don't experience the attraction that they had once for their man.
Yeah.
So how can they work on keeping that attraction that was once there?
This is a course that I'm putting together, actually, like a video product.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll mention something so that way you guys have a little bit more, like something that you can actually use. You know, what drops out is our emotional attraction. Exactly. You know, it's and then we start communicating in ways that aren't necessarily conducive to the relationship as they once were when we first met. So one of the first things is to realize that every emotion that you experience transfers into another human being. You know, and so one of the things that we mentioned here is appreciation, to just walk out and be grateful for being alive, to experience nature. Step into your own feminine radiance. That's the first step.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a woman, and for a man, step into presence, to be direction. And when you step in front of your woman, and I say you're a woman, but like, you know, because he's your man, it's that place of not necessarily ownership, because I don't feel we ever own each other, but you get into a place where you're in front of one another. A man should speak to his woman with a place of presence, that she feels that she can test him however she wants. At the end of it, she still feels safe. She still feels certain. She still feels that he cares. And so I think it's incredibly important for people to fall back into, a woman to fall into her femininity, if she is that, and a man to fall back or to step into his masculinity, if he is that.
I think that is so true, because the roles tends to be mixed up. And I think if people want more, they can go to that.
Oh yeah, I'll have a video product up soon, bumpinginto.love.com, and I'll release that product probably in the next couple months. But you know,
that is so sweet. The way that I can relate to when a relationship has gone, what can you say? It's just slower than the beginning. Is with girlfriends, and we didn't talk so much about it, but a lot of things that you said can also be applied in just general friendships, right? Mm-hmm. And so I have a girlfriend who, well, she never seems to have the resource to hang out with me, and I can try to persuade her to see me, and it's that sort of deal, that when you have someone in your life that you have to persuade to be together with you, that's a bit tough.
I remember another woman mentioned this to me as well. She was also in a similar situation. She just wasn't invited all the time to be with friends, for instance. It might be your experience too.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad with me.
Okay.
But yeah, that could be the case. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what we need to realize is, you know, there were patriarchal societies where there were alpha males, yes. But there were also matriarchal societies that we've evolved from, that there were alpha females. We can just as easily become the leader of our tribe and create those areas of conversation, to be the one that connects people and say, hey, you know what, like, let's all meet. And if that person doesn't want to necessarily meet, that's okay. You know, people go through all sorts of things that we will never, ever know of. You know, this is why cosmetic surgery is so important. There was a cosmetic surgeon, Maxwell Maltz, who studied why is it that people would come to him, and some people would go and do the cosmetic surgery, and afterward they just still felt like they weren't enough. And he realized that there's both the external representation, which everybody sees, but there's also the internal representation of what we see of ourselves. And so sometimes people they just need to connect with themselves. They need to step away. I mean, for everything that I talk about connection and love and happiness and going out and meeting people, right now I'm working on my own Finding Love event, a place where people will go into a seminar and experience everything that I talk about, like literally experience it. And in order for me to do that, I need to step away and actually create the curriculum. And so I'm spending all my days like kind of like cooped up in this little apartment trying to like build it out and make sure it's beautiful and everything. And, you know, sometimes that happens and we forget that the connection outside is important as well. But, you know, so people are at different stages. But you can
love someone from afar and give them that space and that freedom to do their thing and then return to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I say love them or love them away, right? If you're in a position where a person is not what you want them to be, or the way you want them to show up in the relationships that you have. But absolutely, like, give people space, give people that place where they realize, you know, and you can even mention that, you know, I've been in a place where a person started quote unquote ghosting me or like moving away. And I just said, hey, you know what? Like, I realized that we've moved away from each other, and I'm okay with that. I just want, you know, I want to send you love. I want to send you happiness, and I'm here if you need me at any point. And I think that's beautiful.
Just to articulate it and get it out there. Oh, Diego Cassina, I could speak a long time with you. This is amazing. Thank you for being so true to yourself. I think that's what makes a difference, really. And I would like if you would say the final words that you always say on your videos.
Oh yes, that comes from one of my favorite music groups. They have a song called "Don't Forget About a Thing Called Love."
Yeah.
So if anybody wanted to find out anything more about me, my website is bumpingintolove.com. And then also my Facebook, it's just type in Diego Cassina. You'll see the one with the followers. As always, I want to thank you immensely, Maria, and all your followers.
Thank you.
The one message that I leave everybody with is the one that's most important. Don't forget about a thing called love.
Way. So sweet. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, Maria.
Remember love, and remember to share this podcast with your friends online and in real life. I will be grateful to you, and your friends will be grateful to listen to this inspiring message from Diego Cassina, who tends to go straight into the female heart and direct our focus to what we often neglect and ultimately can lose. And that is our connections to others and ourselves. Take care out there and feel fantastic until next time.